So for this week's episode, I think we're going to do something we're going to keep it light, keep it easy, keep it kind of brainless. And I think you're just going to get another Ski Rex Media story from Tim from Ski Rex Media's past. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a story day here today on the Ski Rex Media podcast. Now, one of the reasons I want to do a story today, well, there's a couple of reasons. The first reason is I'm kind of under the weather, kind of weak, so I'm going to just keep this one easy. And a story is going to be the easiest way because I don't really have to think about it. I can just tell it, and I've told it 100 times, so I think it'll be pretty easy on you, pretty easy on me for the week. The other reason is because this kind of got sparked off by something we were talking about on Twitter. We had a Twitter conversation, and at some point something came up about, I think it was on Twitter, something came up about if you're not falling, you're not really trying. And that's something, it's kind of like a mantra, that we in the ski world have, I think. A lot of people have said this. I've heard it. One of the first places I heard it was one of my supervisors at Mount Snow said that to us. He said, if you're not falling, then you're not really doing anything out there. And we all fall. But anyway, that came up from talking about how people stop going after they fall. There have been people, and I've known people who've done this, who've gone out on their first day, wrecked, and they gave up. They just didn't want to go back. They had a bad that was their bad day, and they gave up. So they didn't go skiing again, or didn't go snowboarding again. I always tell people, look, number one, everybody falls. Everybody falls. Everybody falls on their first day, and if they didn't, they really weren't moving. It's just the way it is. It's fine. It really doesn't hurt. It can, but it really doesn't. But I always say embrace it. Embrace the fall. Learn to love the fall. As long as you fall right and don't get hurt. Maybe if you do get hurt. I got hurt, and needed physical therapy for a month, and I embraced it. And, I went on with myself. But I had already been skiing for a long time at that point. So my story comes from the want to embrace a fall that I think if anybody would have seen it, I'm fairly certain it would have been glorious. I think glorious is a good way to put it. Now, it all starts on a day. It was a powder day. It was fresh snow, inches deep, and we must have had over a foot. And this was back at Mount Snow, so it was around sometime in the late '90s, early 2000s. Before everybody had a camera on them, whether it be the cell phone in their pocket or the GoPro attached to their helmet or to their chest. And I think this was even before the first GoPro came out. The GoPro still camera, you remember that from 2004 or 2005 when it was just a 35 millimeter little wrist mounted camera? Remember that? This was before that. So it did not get caught on video, which kind of is disappointing to me because of how glorious I thought this was. So let me take you back to Mount Snow. And for those who know, hashtag Ski the East, for those who have heard of Carinthia Parks at Mount Snow, Carinthia is just a section of Mount Snow. It's on the south side. It's not on the south face of the mountain, but it's on, if you were to look at Mount Snow, you'd be looking west and it would be to your left. So that would be south. It wasn't always a park area. That's where the half pipe went in. That's where the park started being built. But at this time, I don't think it was all that big of a park area, as I recall. It was still the old Planet 9, from back then. I had friends who worked in that lodge too. So, I worked at the Summit. They worked at the lodge. I also worked at the Grand Summit Hotel. Remember all those hotels that got built in the American Ski Company days? I worked in the one at Mount Snow. In any case, we were over on that side of the hill for whatever reason. And I don't, it was a nice part of the hill. We were just out riding. That's all we were doing. Nothing big, nothing fancy, just taking advantage of a nice day. And it had to have been midweek because we were able to do it. We weren't working, a couple of us. Most of us who were off Monday and Tuesday, or the school kids were off during the week, obviously. And I think I had already graduated. So this is near the very end of the 90s. Beautiful powder day, overcast skies, all that good stuff. And we were just riding, skiing. So we're heading down towards Carinthia in any rate. And we're going and we're going and we're skiing and we're skiing. And for some reason, I can't remember if we got separated before my fall or if we got separated because of my fall, me and my friends. It was like one or two other people. I'm not even 100% sure who was actually there. So if any of you guys from the past are watching this and remember this, at least your part of it, because it'll be the end, because nobody saw it, which is part of the unfortunateness of it, the unfortunate part of it. If you remember, let me know. So we're skiing, and it's a powdery day. Your feet were sunk in. You've skied this before. You know what I'm talking about, feet sunk in. And we weren't really going fast, and I didn't expect to do anything spectacular. But for some reason, as we're coming down, and I was in third, for whatever reason, I know there were three of us, and I was in third. So one person goes down, second person, third person. And as I'm bringing up the rear, for some reason, I hit something underneath that sent me airborne. Not really high. I'm not much of a jumper. I can do it as a technique to save my own life or somebody else's. I have a story about how I had to jump over a kid to save his life. He wasn't, all right, that's being dramatic. I just would have hit him and the kid would have gotten hurt. He was little. But I jumped over him. I can jump. But typically I don't. So I don't know why I caught the air. I really don't know why I went airborne. But I did. So you have to picture now someone who went airborne without meaning to. And for the first second, it was kind of awesome. It was really kind of awesome. And I was going up and my body went straight up in the air. I'm like, all right, this is kind of cool. Had my arms out to the sides. But my body kept going forward. So if you figure my feet as the point of the lever, I know that's not exactly right, but my feet were the pivot point, and they never changed at all, but my body just pivoted on my feet, and I went forward and I went under. Now, this fall must have looked amazing because all I could see in my goggles was a puff of white. I could only imagine that it looked similar to like when you set off flash powder, not even flash powder, but like gunpowder. You ever see that white puff of smoke that just kind of just poof, and there it is. And I have to imagine that's what it looked like because I went in. Now, I couldn't have been in for too long, but I went under. It felt similar to diving into the water. I just went up and over and under. So I remember pushing myself up on my hands, kind of, just doing a push-up. And I'm thinking to myself at that time, I'm like, God, that must have looked amazing. So I looked up to see, yes, this is what got my friends and I separated. And I looked up hoping one of them was there, had turned around. Maybe there was someone else who was coming down behind us. But like I said, it was a weekday. We had the mountain to ourselves and it was snowing. So, nobody's out driving in this except the people who absolutely have to work or absolutely want to ski. That's it. Nobody else is going out. I mean, emergencies, of course, but for the people who want to go out as opposed to have to, nobody wants to. We wanted to. I pushed myself up. I looked around, and I there was nobody. It's silence. That nice winter storm silence where it's just snow falling around you, and it's very still and very quiet. It's almost, if it was nighttime, you'd actually be kind of a little, anxious looking around. It'd be so silent. You can hear, the pin drop. And I looked around, there was nobody there. So my greatest glorious fall went unobserved. It went completely unobserved. No one saw it. And I go down and I catch up with my friends, and they were waiting by the lift. They were like, well, what happened to you? And it was obvious because even though I brushed the nice fluffy stuff off, I was still disheveled enough for them to notice. Plus, if I was that far behind, something had to have happened. I stopped for a reason, and that reason was because I was sunk in under a foot of powder snow. So that's the story, and the story itself is quick. Do a little chime check here. The story itself is quick. The moral is embrace it. I didn't get hurt. And I was willing to brag about the fall. I really was. I was like, dude, this looked friggin' awesome. This was great. What a great, wonderful thing that would have been. And if someone would have seen it, it would have been better. But nobody did. And I'm not afraid to admit it. I don't feel embarrassed by it. I don't feel anything. It was funny. And, I get some people do fall and get hurt, and that's not funny. And I know that. I've seen some really, really bad. I have horrible stories too, not to mention, with all my good stories I think are funny, I have a lot of horrible ones too. But this was fine. And I wish most people could embrace their fall like that, because then they would keep going. I've talked to people who fell, didn't get hurt, but just kept going down. And they're in the learning area, and who knows why? Who knows why they actually kept falling down? Maybe they just weren't getting the hang of it. Maybe they just don't really like it. Maybe they didn't really want to be there. But for the ones who wanted to be there, who kept falling on their ass or something, they couldn't get past it. And in some people, it's the embarrassment. I've seen people embarrassed, 100% embarrassed, and it's like, dude, you don't have to be embarrassed. Everybody does it, and if you're not doing it, that means you're just standing still. To that point, I went years without falling. But when I look back on those years, I was just cruising. I wasn't trying, I wasn't getting off blues. But then we used to take a lot of beginners. It was a couple of seasons. We used to take a lot of ski trips, and we had a lot of beginners. So it was a couple seasons before we started heading back over to diamond areas. We used to ski Stratton a lot in southern Vermont as well. Excuse me. And we really didn't end up on their diamond stuff much. One year we decided to force the issue, but that's another story altogether. The point here was embrace your fall. Understand that everyone does it, and there'll be people there to help you. It's actually Tuesday evening, Tuesday the 12th, and today there was a Twitter conversation between, various people who follow me and I follow them and all that good stuff on Twitter about it was Lance. Lance is a fan of the podcast. He asked about people helping, and someone's going to help you. There'll be people who point and laugh and they're douchebags and, ignore them. But people will help you. Don't be embarrassed by a fall. Just learn how to fall. And again, when I say embrace the fall, don't go out and force yourself to fall. Just know that if you do it, it could hurt. It probably won't. It's snow after all. And embrace it, because it might look better than you realize. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. And if you do get hurt, understand that. Use that to come back and try and learn from that fall. Like I learned from that fall. I learned to pay more attention and don't take powder for granted. Something I should have known anyway. And I probably did know it, but for whatever reason, I was doing whatever happened. That part I can't remember. Like I said, I can't remember why I went airborne. Pretty strange, right? But yeah, embrace it. Embrace your fall and keep going. Don't use your fall as an excuse. Like, oh, I kept falling, so I don't do it. If you didn't want to do it to begin with, be honest, because it is a dangerous sport and falling can get you hurt. Typically, it won't. Unless you're trying something way out of your skill set or something to add to the the difficulty level. There's a big difference between riding the learning center, taking a little carpet lift up and riding down that not so steep hill versus going to tackle the baddest triple diamond the mountain has to offer, or thinking after one day of lessons, maybe you should be, on the half pipe. You probably shouldn't be. So stay within your skill level, and then if you fall, embrace it. It's not much of a moral. But I like that story because I like the visual of just the cloud of powder snow flying up out from under me as I went into a foot or foot and a half of powder. But I think it's good to know that you can embrace it. Embrace your fall. Tell your story. Have a laugh. If you get hurt, fine. We'll deal with that. But typically, if you just go on your ass, just go down. If you saw last week's episode where my friend Mike was talking about, I think he told the story of no, he didn't actually tell the story, but he did allude to the fact that he wiped out just a ton and a half he wiped out, but he'll keep doing it because he really did enjoy it and he embraced his falling. He was learning what to do. So he could probably agree with this. So shout out to, Mike if he watches this one or listens to this one. And I think that's it. I don't know if you can tell by my voice. I'm gonna have to probably pump the volume on this because I'm like I said, I'm under the weather. So I hope you enjoyed the story. I hope you enjoyed the episode. It's kind of short. If I do a time check here, I've been talking for about 15 minutes, so that's about what it'll be. Much shorter than last week's episode. So I'm gonna get you out of here quick because I'm going to, get this worked up for tomorrow morning, and then I'm gonna go to bed probably. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to be back as soon. We're working out schedules for other guests to talk about different things that have been going on in the industry, on personal levels, on, public levels, all this stuff. So we're going to try and get some more people on here to talk about different subjects, see what we can do. For now, listen to this one, listen to past episodes. If you're listening audio version, it's on buzzsprout.com, and then you can find Ski Rex Media that way. You can also look up the Ski Rex Media podcast on iHeartRadio, on Spotify, and then there's the YouTube channel that has the video version. So if you're not watching and want to watch, you can do that. If you're watching and would rather just listen, you can go to the other way. Those are all down in the description. Today I got my first not my first email totally. You know what? I'm not 100% sure, but a podcast fan went to skirexforever@gmail.com, also down in the description. You don't have to memorize it. It's right there, and you can and emailed some good stuff, compliments. So I thank him. I wish I could remember his name offhand. I can't, but we'll get that shout out at some point. So go down in the description. I love the contact. I like to talk to people. And like I said, I want to get more than, I would love to get, like, I don't want to say known, but pros or something. Eventually we'll get to that point, maybe, sometime down the line, but I'd like to get, the ski community at large, the Ski Rex Media community, to talk on the podcast, man. So, if you're into that and you have ideas and you want to talk about it, by all means, hit me up, drop me a line, and we'll go ahead and we'll get you on. All right. We're still working on the hardware issues, but we'll figure something out. All right. For now, I'm Tim from Ski Rex Media. Excuse me. I'm Tim from skirexmedia.com. Not feeling the best. I hope you are. Enjoy your week. There's places to ski all over the place, open midweek, and then this weekend there should be even more. So get out there if you can. If you can't, enjoy the week. Have a good day, and as the season goes on, I'll see you out on the slopes, man. Laters.